giving too much time to the constitution is not actually a wise idea. It's important to work on the constitution. Most of our constitutions in the third world are actually perfect. But the problem is how the constitution is put into action, making people feel that they are part and parcel of this. They are not just watching it on the TV or listening to the radio, but they're actually part of it. The average person feeling that they are the stakeholders of change.
So, Dr. HEBA RAOUF, looking at how you have seen the situation, how you have been following, I want to start with two questions. Do you find hope? And secondly, in your opinion, what are the differences that we are seeing and the similarities with the Egypt 2013 revolution?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. So I really am very honored. It struck me actually that there are so many similarities due to the mentality of teaching regions in the academia in terms of regional studies. So you get the impression that there are substantial differences, and hence we have this regional studies approach in politics and in strategy and in international relations studies. But actually, when we were talking, there are so many similarities. Our societies are similar, and the challenges that are set by the nation state as a frame after quote unquote independence or the establishment of the modern nation state, regardless of the course that it took, made many societies let alone look alike, let alone globalization. So sometimes I say that we are all the children of modernity, whether we like it or not. Somehow it affected very much the political framing. It affected very much the players on the nation state level. It affected very much our understanding of the world and positioning ourselves as well. So I wanted to give a short description of what happened in our case, and then we can compare and focus on the points that are a bit problematic. So what happened in the case of Egypt, where I come from? I'm based in Istanbul, but I'm Egyptian, heart and soul and mind. So what happened in our case is that there were struggles and there were conditions actually before the Arab Spring that were not as bad as the conditions in Bangladesh. To some extent, we had a fairly political space, though the major political power that was the Muslim Brotherhood was not granted any legal position. I mean, they were not granted a political party, and they were, since the 80s, the 1980s, they were in coalition with some classic parties, including parties that were historically their enemies, like the Liberal Party of the Wafd, for example. This was the first coalition they made so that they enter in the elections on the lists of the, or with cooperation of the Liberal Party. And then this cooperation collapsed and they moved to the Socialist Party. They made some cooperation with the Labour Party, which was a socialist party headed by a socialist that later became more Islamically inclined. Hossain, he was an economist or a writer on political economy. And then they started, as the electoral system changed, they started going at the beginning as listed on the individual lists, and then also in cooperation with some parties here and there, and eventually won massively in 2005. And they got 88 seats, which gave them, boosted their sort of presence in the political realm. And in 2010, they lost all seats. The regime decided that this might lead to them getting more and more power and decided to close this page. And hence there were elections and they were quite violent instances here and there. And eventually they didn't win a single seat. 2011, the Arab Spring took place because the density of the anger on the street due to other economic circumstances as well. Here, although I'm a political scientist by training, but economy plays a very important. And I kept saying 2011 and 12 till we had priority to economy. People might feel happy that the regime is changing because it gives them hope, and they are suffering and they feel that something is like maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel, maybe we can change, etc. But the average citizen, the lay people, don't have patience for long waits. And sometimes when the army or some other groups interfere and say, enough is enough, we had enough chaos after a year or two, people would say, yes, we want order. Order comes first, because of the disorder that takes place after the change. And you mentioned the thugs and the vandalizing and the looting, etc. This also took place. We have some estimates in the case of Egypt that we have a small, we call them metaphorically a small army appearance, but at the same time, they were actually working closely on the side of the police in some moments of confrontation, violent confrontations. So it's very tricky. These are not just poor people who are seizing the opportunity. Sometimes they are organized violent forces that work closely with the regime, and the regime knows very well how to give them orders, or even give them promises that if you work closely with us, we'll drop the cases against you, and then you can have your own benefits from the new situation, etc. So the first lesson that we had is, don't make things take too long. The case of Tunisia, for those who have been closely watching it, this is where the Arab Spring actually started and then moved on to Egypt and then Syria and other countries. It took them quite a long time working on the constitution, and eventually in one day, the constitution can be completely freed. So by the government or by the army or by the new president that has been elected basically democratically, he completely said, we will not work with the constitution, we will change a lot. And then he interfered, though he was not coming from a military background. So giving too much time to the constitution is not actually a wise idea. It's important to work on the constitution. Most of our constitutions in the third world are actually perfect. But the problem is how the constitution is put into action. It's about the judiciary, it's about the executive, it's about the system and the security system, etc. And playing with the law is very easy. Yeah, the constitution is there, but then when you go down to the different legal articles, the tricks are there, and they can be some articles can be introduced into different laws, even by a president that has been elected, and then things don't go as you wish. So it's important to have a conversation about the constitution, but I think that to a great degree, economy should be a priority, and making people feel safe. So safety and economy, and also education. So making sure that the universities resume teaching, making sure that the schools are working, trying to address the issues of providing safety to the students. In some other countries, it was difficult to do that, and then there was interruption of the educational system. So security in everyday life, giving priority to the economy and to making things stable and people feeling safe for their everyday life, I think it's very important. But it's not something that comes up from above. It's also partly and majorly something that can be initiated by the people themselves. So are we looking at the change top down or bottom up? And one of the lessons that we had in the Egyptian case during the Arab Spring was actually that the moment of the 28th of January 2011, when there was attack on police stations and the country went out of sort of control, and people gathered in Tahrir Square and managed to seize Tahrir Square to become the iconic space of the uprising for 18 days, and then Mubarak stepped down. He was toppled. During that time, all the media focused on Tahrir Square because it was the biggest square in Cairo and people gathered there. It was blocked by the people. Eventually, the army tanks surrounded the square to protect the revolutionaries. Okay, and the army declared that it will protect the revolution, etc. And a Supreme Council of Armed Forces was basically formed to manage the country. And it kept managing the country for a full year. In the elections of the parliament, it was basically in power. And then it still was, the real power was in its hand, even after the election of the democratic elections of the president, Mohamed Morsi, before the coup on in 2013, in July the 3rd. What is important is actually during that time when every all the media of the world was focusing on Tahrir Square. Nobody asked the question, what is going on the streets of different cities in Egypt? What was going on the high roads? How did people manage their life during this stopping of everything in the country? How people managed? And I wrote actually a piece about the popular committees that were formed all over the country. In one night, when people realized that the security system is not functioning, that the police is not intact, people formed popular committees to protect their neighborhoods across the country. Even in villages, people formed popular committees to protect the high roads that are falling in the village sort of realm. So they consider, especially in Upper Egypt, where people have tribal connections, they thought that it's a matter of honor. We need to protect the high roads and the roads because they fall into our territory, and it's not acceptable that people who are passing by would not feel safe. And there were actually small checkpoints created by the people to check that that people were afraid of arms being sort of transported from one area to the other. And even they caught some thugs that were heading to do some looting, etc. So the popular committees were actually something like neighborhood watch and area watch by the people themselves. And I think that giving attention to local politics and making people feel that they are part and parcel of this, they are not just watching it on the TV or listening to the radio, but they're actually part of it. The average person feeling that they are the stakeholders of change. It's good. We thank very much the students and the different youth that participated, etc. But the lesson that we learned is that people focus on that youth because they lack experience. And this is not something that we accuse them of. This is reality. You definitely have less experience than people that have been more into the machine of power, that know more how things function, etc. So yes, usually these coalitions of youth come with these statements saying, we don't want partisan politics anymore. We want enough with ideologies, focus on citizenship. We want the youth to lead. And they are the best facade for usually the forces of the past. They are the best facade. They say, yeah, super, yes, of course. We don't want all these people who talk about ideology. We want a country where citizenship is more important. Come, we want you to participate. And when they enter into the corridors of power, as we call them, they either are co-opted because they don't have the experience, and they tell them whatever they want to tell them. You know, these leaders on the street, these leaders of other countries, they are whatever they are. You are the future of the country. You are the youth. And when things settle, these youth are actually facing either prison, or sometimes some of them escape to exile. And we have many cases. In the case of Egypt, we had a revolutionary youth coalition that was formed out of so many youth from completely different ideological background. And they said, we don't want the big, the big elephants of the big parties or the big organizations. We want to be the youth that leads, and we will sort of overcome our ideological differences. Some of them were leftists, some Islamists or ex-Islamists, who said we don't want to have anything to do with the old organizations, etc. And let's just go forward. And it collapsed because you need ideology. Actually, you need ideas. What happened in the vacuum of ideology after some years of the Arab Spring, actually something like 8 or 9 years, is an ultra nationalist voice that started coming up in the country, talking about that we want to defend our national identity, and Egypt comes first, something like Trump's slogan of America first. We want to make America strong again, So we have these voices, especially they have a strong voice against the migrants or the refugees from different countries in the region. Egypt is a very big country. It's quite safe and quite stable. So we have refugees from Sudan, from Syria, from Yemen, from different countries. And they started, till now, there are no violent actions, but the discourse is extremely violent by these very new voices of ultranationalism. and they accept totalitarian regimes. One of them actually, who has a famous page, put a picture a few days ago that he is reading Hitler's Mein Kampf book. And it was really, I mean, I just wanted to,
Okay.
I watch, I don't comment because this is part of my research. So I don't comment. I just, I follow what is going on. I wanted to tell him this is a stupid thing that you can do to yourself, actually. It's like, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to put through as a message, yani, that we are going to kill the refugees, or we'll treat them like Hitler treated the Jews in the Holocaust or something? It's like, what is this as a message, yani? So you will find so many things that are very awkward coming up during the coming years, and unless people realize that freedom and civil rights are number one, everyone will lose. Because at the end of the day, civilians are less powerful than the sovereign state, with its military, with its police system, with its judiciary that is very much into the deep state relations and coalitions as well, and people are the only way to tame these forces. A massive movement of rights, civil rights, and also engagement in local politics in the different neighborhoods. There should be like watch groups, committees to help people to realize what are the different needs of every community. Bangladesh is not small in space. So different communities, I mean, the borders with Burma, for example, you have different problems than the borders with India on the west side. It's like in every area, the north is different from the south. So people in different areas should decide the priority and should also give priority to the economic situation and safety and security, because this is number one for people to trust and to embark on the democratic road, bottom up, not top down. And this is one of the things that I wanted to focus on.